This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, a vibrant online learning community providing high-quality educational content, the opportunity to connect with peers, and an outlet for new ideas in the field of nonprofit fundraising research.
Your resume is your first profile that you're writing for me. And so if you have spelling errors on your own stuff, which you know probably the best, then I get a little concerned that is something going to go to the president with a spelling error.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Leigh Petersen, Senior Director, Advancement Services and Operations at Southwestern University.
Hello, Leigh. Thank you for joining us on Chat Bites today.
Hi, great to be here.
So I really want to ask you some questions about being a manager, about managing others, hiring prospect researchers. But first, I'm hoping that you'll be willing to share with us a little bit about how you ended up in prospect research.
Yeah, it was by accident, but just probably how most researchers get into the field. I was working in planned giving, doing frontline fundraising, and really loved the job, but wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, and had started my MBA at Loyola and was really loving all my data classes and found that I had a natural inclination towards that type of study. And at that time, we were looking to refocus from just a pure research bio shop to an overall comprehensive prospect development team. And my manager was moving over to oversee that area, and she suggested that I go with her. And so it was one of those kind of serendipity times where the stars were aligned, but knowing, stuff about data in the front line and planned giving really was able to help me step right into that track and that new career path.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I haven't heard too much of that, where you were in the front line and moved on over, especially going for more education. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and it was exciting. I had relationships with everyone, so it worked really nicely because I could say, I've done this before, or I had those frustrations, so I know what you need kind of things. And so it was super helpful to get into that area because I could kind of anticipate needs maybe more than I would have if I just would have gone in from a different route.
Right. You were able to stay with the same team. Your first management position, that was also at Loyola.
Yeah, I would say that was like my first real management. I had surprisingly done some oversight of security at a 2,500 seat theater in Nebraska, at the University of Nebraska. But that was just a little different because it was part-time staff and contracted evenings. And so, this was the first real managerial position that I'd accepted.
What was it like to transition from the same, you know all these team members and you're the worker bee, and then now you're in a management position? What was that like?
It felt quite natural because I feel like I kind of always gravitated to the president of like clubs or taking lead on committees. And I just naturally tend to go in that kind of leadership position. And so management came quite naturally. I feel like I'm a team builder, like to rally people together, like to be part of big projects. And so going into managerial role it felt kind of natural and actually more exciting. I kind of feel like once I got into that manager role, I really don't really see myself ever stepping out of that position. And but it does come with some challenges of, you still have to do your job and be a manager, which is take a lot of time. And sometimes it's hard because you get trained on the hard skills of how to do the job, but there's not maybe as much support on what does it take to be a good, good boss. And so that's really in kind of where I had to focus a lot of my development when I moved into that role, is less the skills and more just how to be a manager.
Now, did you get support for that, or was that, internally you realized I need to get some continuing education on this, or did people tell you that in the role? How did that
Some of
happen?
some of it was just seeing and knowing that there's certain things like being equipped with like what you do in HR situations, like what are your legal things that you need to do. So that was supported mostly through the university, through like workshops they brought in. But I also did a lot of listening tours of folks who had been directors of prospect management or directors of research in the Chicago area, and really asked for their advice on how did they handle, just not only the general transition and a changing environment type of questions, but how do they handle things when you need to, talk to staff about growing skills or identifying when, there's weaknesses on the team. So what do you do? And particularly for researchers, it may be a different kind of personality than what I had been working with before, with more kind of outgoing, front forward, maybe a little more assertive, aggressive. And so, it was just trying to figure out how in this new environment do you become a manager that's also sensitive and open and provides feedback. And so really a lot of the colleagues in the Chicagoland and with APRA and all the AASP, a lot of them became mentors of mine and coaches. And I would often, without disclosing too much personal information, reach out to those folks for like, what would you do in this situation types of support. And then that also helps that I wasn't always constantly leaning on my manager, who was really, really helpful, but you can only go to her for so much stuff. And again, it to me mattered that someone was in the industry, and so they understood some of the same frustrations or challenges that roles like ours consisted of.
It is nice to have a community, for sure. So what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen, either personally in your experience or in the field, in terms of retaining good talent? You've got someone great on board. How do you keep them?
Yeah, I think it's even more challenging now because there are tons of positions out there that open. The market's good for researchers and the roles are evolving. So if you are someone who enjoys the prospect management side, the analytics side, just general data, but that competition of trying to retain those colleagues can be challenging. You have to think about how does your pay compete, and you're not only competing with nonprofits, but you're competing with for-profits or for-profits that have nonprofit feel or arms. And so you're competing with pay. And I often realize that working for universities, there's usually set budgets. And so I might have limits. And so I look towards what are other ways I can increase job satisfaction. And so flexibility is huge. If somebody needs to arrange their schedule to pick up children, or they have a doctor's appointment, being flexible for them to not watch the hours. We also celebrate a lot on our teams. We celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, milestones, great projects. We don't just want to, celebrate the dollars coming in. We've become advocates for that too, but we have our own milestones and wins that we like to celebrate. And I really like to bring people on who really just want to learn and grow. So I think it's a compliment when they do leave to get the next bigger position. Again, if I can't offer them that, then I want to be supportive of their next role. So if it means driving them to support additional training and professional development, which a lot of times universities will pay for conferences and training, but we can't write bonus checks. And so how can I support their long-term professional career? And that just, again, increases job satisfaction. I feel like when people are happy coming to work, then they not only enjoy it, but they also are better colleagues. They produce quality work. So I really focus a lot on building a team environment where we also have each other's back. So folks have shared with me before where their boss doesn't have their back, or they feel like they can't even take vacation because they've got so much stuff to do. And I love my vacation. I love to travel. And so I encourage folks to do the same. And so to me, it's any way I can improve the overall quality of someone's time, because we spend so much time together, will only improve the chances that they'll stick with us longer.
I love that perspective that you can't maybe give them a bonus, and bonus has all these connotations that come along with it. But if you have a budget for continuing ed or a budget for other pieces, you can give that as a reward. And that's how we met.
Yes.
Because you sent one of your employees to the Institute for a course, which is great. Exactly. And we had so much fun. It was surely a reward.
And that's one reason it works. So it's even better when they come back and they're just energized. And again, even if the session isn't directly to research, regardless if they go to a planned giving lunch or something like that, there's something they're going to bring back that is going to improve, their professional development, but also they'll bring it back and teach others. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of professional development and training and just continual learning.
Aren't we all? That's what makes us such great employees.
Yes.
We keep learning new things and solving new problems. So what is the environment like for hiring new professionals? You mentioned lots of new jobs opening. We're competing with for-profit in many cases, competing on pay because of analytics has really brought the pay scale up for us. Like, what is the environment? You've done some hiring. What's it been like? Do you get overwhelmed with applicants? Do you get not such good applicants? What's it like?
Yeah, I have found that generally universities, that's mostly where my experience has been, we don't really do a good job getting our jobs out there. We might use our, listservs, but generally it's not like we're out there. We don't, a lot of universities don't have the opportunity to have like headhunters within their own school. And so we have to look to, alternative ways to find candidates. And so I've done a lot more. I mine LinkedIn, I cold Prospect DMM, fund services. I mean, you name the listserv, I'm on it. I mine for people, and I have a firm belief that I can usually teach skills. I can get the training for skills, but I really am looking towards the person. Like, how do they handle change management? How do they handle failure? How do they overall tackle a problem? How do they work with a variety of personalities? Those are the things that, you can coach a little bit on, but I do generally feel like there is some natural ways that people go in those areas. And so, which is harder because those aren't on people's resumes. Those aren't on, no one puts like LinkedIn, like, I like different personalities. I just don't have that. And so what I end up doing is I call and talk to a lot of people. And again, going back to the networks, I ask people, who do you know? Like, or even, do you have someone great on your team that maybe you can't offer them a director position, but I can? So it'd be a great investment for them to move over here. So there's a lot of offline chatter between managers and directors and getting into that network and using those research skills. I mean, I'll Google somebody as they come in. I mean, a lot of us do as managers. You just have to nowadays be cognitive of the staff that's coming on your team. And I also really look towards, how are people involved? Are they involved in their community? Are they involved with an APRA or an ASP or another case or some other area? To me, that experience with just, they don't just come to work. They also have other interests. They have hobbies. I'm really looking for the whole person, which is challenging to find, but luckily the social media and I'm not afraid to cold call people and say, hey, are you interested, or do you know someone who is? And that's pretty much how I've filled teams at the last, the 3 major universities that I've been at.
That's great. And now that there is social media, I've noticed that a lot of researchers have their own personal blog. Mm-hmm. They have some extracurricular interest and they're writing about it, and they're on Twitter or Facebook, and we can kind of see what kind of person is it. How do they write? It says a lot about them.
Yeah.
So you are using your research skills to mine for people, primary research, calling them up, and on the internet. That's pretty cool. That's a lot of work.
And it is. And but I see that time well invested. And I spent about just under a year in the for-profit world as a corporate recruiter. And so I can read through resumes also really quickly. But so I look for spelling errors. I look for consistency, because those are, again, like your resume is your first profile that you're writing for me. And so if you have spelling errors on your own stuff, which probably the best, then I get a little concerned that is something going to go to the president with a spelling error. So those are just some of the nuances that you can either kind of vet through even before you pick up a phone and talk to someone. And when I interview folks, I have like 3 major questions that I ask them, and really those lead me in a lot of directions of whether to continue a call or not. But I ask them to tell me about themselves. So that gives me light. Where do they maybe hold priority? If they go right to their family, if they go right to their taking classes, they go right to work. It tells me a little bit about how they can shape a story. Then I ask them, why would they want to work for the organization? And I want more than just like, it's a great school. I want some thoughtfulness behind it. And then why they want this position. So, if I have a researcher position and the person looks more data analytics, they've got to sell me why they want to be a researcher, or vice versa. So versus being an event coordinator or, a frontline fundraiser. So those three questions give me a lot of detail and thoughts towards, again, if I'm not kind of sold on those three major questions, then I may cut a call short, or I may continue the conversation for another 30 minutes and invite them in. But those were some the kind of techniques that we use in the for-profit world to kind of cull through candidates. And it's really genuine because it is good to know who the person is, why they're interested, and why this job is so exciting for them.
So wrapping it up, I have one last question for you. One of the things I've heard, and I've experienced some of this myself, when you move into a management position, let's say you've been doing profile type work, prospect identification. Now you're moving into a management position and you're hiring someone else to do that work. Suddenly, your tasks have changed. You're not in the work as much as you used to be. And for people who love doing work, that can be a challenge. Do you have any tips for thinking about management or making that kind of transition?
Yeah, I mean, you do kind of feel sometimes a little bit out of loop. Like right now, I don't meet one-on-one with gift officers. I might come to the larger meetings, but the researcher, she has those conversations. She learns the prospects. So at another organization, I knew the prospects because I helped fundraise, with them and was soliciting them for gifts. And so you do kind of have to ask questions of your colleague, not in a bad way, but say, fill me in. I mean, you kind of have to be a kind of an investigative reporter and say, who's their hot prospect? Tell me about it, and that to me was a little foreign at first because I used to just know names. And so it takes a little bit more discipline to be part of the conversation. And like I said, it would be kind of awkward for me to go to the gift officer and have the same conversation that the researcher had. So the researcher, we have an understanding of what information is good to bring to me and other stuff that's just kind of don't worry about it. So that was definitely a change. So using your team member as kind of your ears and eyes. And then I found that I just needed to carve out more time to do one-on-one, which was also different because, again, you might have more projects. And so you might have to work some extra hours as a manager, especially if you do have some to-do list. And so carving out some time that you have with each team member, I found was also a great way to stay on top of other projects and other stuff that might be going on without your direct involvement. And, I do a lot of check-ins with the managers of the fundraisers and the managers of areas. And so again, I can kind of get high level, but you do kind of feel a little bit out at first. And then once you kind of find your role in terms of where can you help? So maybe I'm not doing the profiles, but my role is to help prioritize the queue. Though I'm not, fingers to the keys every day, I still have a part of the conversation. And so, yeah, it does take some time. And especially in nonprofits where very few of us that get the luxury of just being managers. And we still have to do some stuff. Sometimes you have to have crucial conversations and all that stuff. I mean, I still think with hardships that sometimes managers have to face, I still think it's really awesome to be able to build a team and see them grow and be part of their professional evolution.
Well, some of what I heard you saying there was by being a good manager and talking with your direct reports, you can also be living vicariously through them as well.
Exactly.
So, they're talking about the research that they're doing. You get to learn about it that way.
Yep, exactly. And I think there is always the time that you're not, since you aren't directly in it, you might see something that they don't. And so again, if you're sometimes too close to a project, I love to also say, have you thought about kind of stuff, and not to be devil's advocate and challenge them all the time, but also introduce, let's think about things in a different way type of thinking. And oftentimes I'm I didn't think about looking into that. Or though, again, I'm not sitting there, looking up everything through the research tools, being there as a critical eye. So I do a lot of review and a lot of feedback. I also like to ask them, why did they come to these conclusions? So our profiles, they have capacity ratings on them, but there's a reason why we got to that capacity rating. And so I really see the researcher as the analyst. And so I think of, if I'm a gift officer and I'm hearing what she or he is saying, I want to think about the questions that the gift officer is going to ask. So what do you mean when you say this? Or I'm not really sure what this on this profile means, or that's way too much information that this person's not going to they're not going to read pages 5 through 10. So we don't even need that, So again, though I'm not writing it, that type of review or thinking it with a different hat, I like, and also seems to be helpful.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today. It was wonderful to learn about being a manager and managing. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for your time today.
That was Leigh Petersen, Senior Director, Advancement Services and Operations at Southwestern University. To find chat bites and more prospect research resources, join us in the Resource Collections community at prospectresearchinstitute.org.